definitely one of the big stories coming out this week, and it just really is blowing up today. And its release. It's the Call of Duty franchise. The past we discussed it at Luna Video Games. The past 6 years, they've had a game every year.
Yeah, seven yearly games, and the drama of the past few days has been that it will run at 60 frames per second at 1080p on the PlayStation 4. Yet on the Xbox One, it is going to run at 720p in order to get that 60 frames per second. And the controversy, if you want to call it that, that's surrounding it is lots of journalists, if you want to call them such a thing, including Adam Sessler, have been really downplaying the fact that the resolution is not the same, stating that resolution does not matter. And I would have to call bullshit on that for one main reason, and it's not graphics. It's not visuals. It's that if they had to drop the output of Call of Duty Ghosts on the Xbox One from 1080 to 720 to maintain 60 frames per second, that means there's issues optimizing things for the Xbox One. And that, while by no means is a death knell for the Xbox One in any way, shape, or form, it's trouble to see that sort of thing appearing so quickly out of the gate.
So what does that tell you? That way back in prepping this, that they just totally shit the bed in terms of knowing what proper tech specs they should have in terms of processing power versus video RAM and all that, what bandwidth, like...
I haven't been a tech guy in many years, but like I said, what I can comment on and say fairly confidently is that it's not a good sign. What does it mean? I don't necessarily know. Their hardware is not running as smoothly as it should be. Something that is able to be done on the PS4 cannot be done on the Xbox One, and that is of concern. We're entering the next generation of consoles. Almost every TV that is sold today is a 1080p TV. People, I believe, are expecting from their next generation consoles that they're going to get 1080p out of these games. To see something, even though it's multi-platform and being released on current and next generation systems, Call of Duty Ghosts is a game that I think people are going to look to as a launch title benchmark to see what their system can do out of the box. And if it's only running at 720p, that is at the very least a letdown for people who are maybe not for everyone, but I'm just saying, I think there's a degree of people being disappointed, rightfully so, that their brand new shiny system isn't pushing anything. It's not running at the maximum resolution.
The question is, will this affect sales a lot, you think? I mean, you're going to have people that are Xbox versus Sony fanboys either way, so it may not affect them. Or will it sway that, say, in between 20% of people to go PS3 versus Xbox and say, screw this. I've been sold a false sale of goods, basically.
This is what I think. I don't think it's really going to affect anything at launch day. What I'm more concerned about is a person who does not necessarily fall into either camp, although I have stated on this podcast before that if I get a next generation system, it'll likely be a PS4 for those exclusives. Hey, I really enjoyed my 360. My concern is, what's it going to be able to do in the future? A year from now, since we've got two systems that are doing a bunch of multi-platform games, right? Is this going to be a scenario where the versions that come out on the PlayStation 3 end up being noticeable, or PlayStation 4 end up being noticeably better than the versions that come out on the Xbox One? I don't think the damage is going to happen immediately. I think it's going to be a long-term thing. In a year, people who are waiting to buy a system are going to look at what's out. They're going to look at comparisons of both versions that have hit both systems. And if this continues to be a problem for more than one title that's on both systems, yes, I think then eventually it will sway people to the PlayStation 4.
So this is what I brought up to you before, speaking before the pre-podcast prep, was what is really the difference between 720p and 1080p? Most people don't even know. What that means is 1080p is, 1920 times 1080 pixel resolution, length versus height. 720p is 1280 times 720 lines of resolution that you're getting. Obviously, that means it's sharper image.
Correct.
That's really what it amounts to. That's really all it amounts to, is sharper image. You're producing more detail because you have more lines to draw out. However, my argument is that, unless you have a TV that's, say, even 45, 50 inches, And unless you're sitting 5 feet or 3 feet away, you're not going to be able to tell the difference with the naked eye. If you're on a small screen, if you're definitely on a 20-inch TV, you won't be able to tell the difference.
No,
It doesn't matter then.
You're correct. Someone like me with my mole eyes, it's not going to affect me much. But like I said, I think that's the problem with this whole argument that's going around. A lot of people are saying things like graphics don't matter. Well, correct, to a degree that they don't. This isn't a problem with graphics. This is what is the underlying cause that is making the Xbox One not able to put it at 1080p. Is it going to affect your enjoyment of Call of Duty Ghosts? No, probably not. Visually, unless, like you said, you're playing on a massive TV, it's not going to affect much. My question is, why can't the Xbox One do it?
We're not going to even get an answer to that. That's the bad part.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's going to affect anything immediately. In a year, I think that's when we're going to see, well, is this game having problems keeping a constant frame rate at 1080? Does this game have to drop to 720? Is the power of the Xbox One, despite the fact that the systems on paper look very similar, and I personally don't feel like there's got to be that big of a difference, is there something in the build of the Xbox One that is causing it to be an inferior system? And that's what's going to hurt them. And this, I think, is the tip of it, and people are going to be paying attention very closely. And while I don't think it's going to matter a great deal, if you want an Xbox One, it shouldn't stop you from going to get one. I feel like the internet at large is going to be dissecting everything that comes out for the Xbox One.
So this brings up to the point that someone, a big, I guess, journalist you can call him, in gaming today, he's been around for like 10 years, Adam Sessler, came out today, and was it today or yesterday? I think it was yesterday. And he basically said, what's the big deal that it's not in 1080p? Call of Duty Ghosts, 720p is fine. And he's getting a lot of flack for it.
Well, we just explained what the big deal is.
Yeah.
It's not from a visual standpoint. That's not what you need to be concerned about. The big deal is, what are you actually getting in your Xbox One? What's your system capable of? And that's the larger problem. And that's what a true journalist should be talking about is, look, this isn't. It's not to sound alarmist, and I can already hear people writing me death threats. But
what is it a harbinger of, basically? What if you can't do the graphics you promised? What else can't you do? Maybe?
Right, exactly. And that's exactly
what it is.
What are we getting? And it's not to say you shouldn't get one, because there are some, like D4, for instance, is an exclusive that I would love to play that currently is exclusive to only Xbox One. I'm not saying don't get it. If it's got the games you want, get it. But it is concerning to me that it can't do something that people thought was going to be a given. And it is concerning to see a gentleman who, 3 months ago, stated that he expected everything to be running at 1280p.
Yeah, or
1080p.
What he said was, and I think it was at SGC, which when I went to Screw Tech Gaming Convention, he said that next-gen games, 60 frames per second, 1080p, that's to be expected. And if you come from the standpoint that I do that, there's not a huge amount of difference between this next generation coming out and the current generation, then yeah, that must be what you're building yourself as. Because if you're not getting better graphics, better frame rate, better processing power, why even have new consoles? So, I mean, if people look at them as being hypocritical in that aspect, because if you're saying this is what next gen should be and now it's not, then if 720p is only good enough, where are we at then with gaming in terms of what's next? Why buy an Xbox One? Why buy a PS4 then?
I think that, and it's not just Sessler. I don't know the names of the other journalists. Like I said, this has been a thing that's been on the internet for a few days now, and this is where the journalism aspect gets me. I think people are afraid to call it out because the Xbox One is roughly 50% of what is going to float these people's careers for the next 8 years. Releases on the Xbox One and releases on the PS4 are what these people are going to be talking and writing about for the next 8 years. And I think people are afraid to step on the toes of a system that is not out yet, or a company that is about to release a system, when they know that a chunk of their livelihood depends on reviewing things that surround that machine. And
Sure.
I think it's odd to be afraid of a system and to talk about the actual problems, because it isn't. It's not nearly as superficial as graphics. It's more about the performance and what do you get. Like I said, I've said it a million times, but what are you getting out of your machine?
Sure. So if you're playing Call of Duty, you want to be able to, maybe, I don't know, maybe there would be slowdown issues. If the processing power, if there's a bottleneck in the tech side, and once there's 20 guys on the screen, maybe you see a few less frames. And obviously people, if they're spending $500 on a new console, they want the biggest and the
Right.
best.
And I just want to be clear, because I don't want to sound one-sided. Sony's been extremely tight-lipped and reluctant to show things on the PS4 in the weeks leading up to its launch, including making people sign a lot of NDAs and very, very carefully curating what kind of news comes out of the PS4. So there are people who have valid concerns about the PlayStation 4 as well. Shouldn't you be ready to show off your new toy to the world? Why the secrecy? So this is not just an Xbox One rant. I think what we're getting at is we have two systems coming out, and people are just about to realize how little difference there are between the 360 and the 3 as opposed to the 1 and the 4.
I said
that's the issue.
I said that at E3 in June. That when I was looking at the games,
sure.
I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah. And we've been talking about that for a while, and I think that's the problem. I think the companies are now at the point where they realize that they have to deliver this console to the market, and it's going to be underwhelming.
So
I think that's
all
I can say on that.
I don't have a horse in this race. But with Microsoft, the way they've been treating, indie games this generation, obviously the Kinect stuff, the DRM stuff, the used game stuff, I don't care if they fall flat in their asses. I don't. But I'm saying it's not like Sony's this magical company that's going to sweep in and do good either. But, the point is you better deliver what you promise. So, again, it's a $500 system. It's not $300. It's not even $400.
Well, that's if you go back to the Xbox One, that's kind of the other thing is, you've got the PlayStation 4 at $400, and you have the Xbox One at $500,
and the Wii U's at $300.
And if the most expensive system, if the more expensive system is delivering less than the $100 less system, then that's a cause for consumer concern.
Sure.
Anyway.